Hi, my name is Susan Heald. I am the Textile Conservator for the National Museum of the American Indian. And today I want to talk to you about some tips for surface cleaning textiles. At first I wanted to show you a variety of fabrics because there's a lot of different types of textile and garment surfaces that you might encounter. First we have this is a plain weave. It's called a balanced weave. And so that's when you kind of have an even surface. This is cotton. Like bed sheets, men's dress shirts are an example of plain weave. This is a satin weave, so all the probably the warps are floating in one direction, so you have kind of a surface direction. The predominant threads are going on the surface in this direction. So that's called satin weave. It's different from a balanced weave. This is what would be called a warp face weave. This is, and actually this wool textile with this design, this is also a warp face weave, and the predominant yarns are going in this direction, creating the pattern. So that's the warp yarns. And the weft yarns, which actually you can see a little bit right here where there's damage, those are the weft yarns going side to side. So that's an example of a warp face textile, and a Navajo blanket would have the wefts are predominantly on the surface covering the warps, and that'd be going in this direction. So this is also an example of a balanced weave, but this has a different type of surface. This is called a napped surface, and in the processing, this is a wool textile, and the fibers have been brushed up mechanically. So you have this, what we call nap. It's kind of a fuzzy surface. Flannel is a good example of a nap textile. So a lot of times these get dirty because they have that napped surface and they collect dust. We also have pile textiles with pile. That would be an example of this textile. This is a velveteen. Velvet isn't a good example of a pile textile. Shag carpets, that's a pile textile. And this pile also has a direction. So this is, the fibers are going in this direction. You can kind of feel. If I go like this, probably you can see that. That's like, you know, petting your cat or your dog in the wrong direction. So when you're surface cleaning, you always want to go in the direction of the pile if you have a pile textile. And if you have a warp face textile, you want to clean in the direction of the warp. And if it's a weft face, you would go in the direction of the weft. So whichever way is going to cause the least amount of stress to your textile is the direction you want to clean in. I also want to talk a little bit about skin and fur garments. So this is a probably brain tan deer skin, and its surface is kind of like a napped surface because it is the way it's been processed and scraped. There's a little bit of directionality, and it also has fibers that are raised to the surface. So this is similar to a napped, what would be like a napped textile. And this is a sample of I think it's bear fur. And this also is, in a way, like a pile textile. The fur fibers have a direction. So again, if you were cleaning that, and we'll talk about the cleaning techniques a little later, but this all has a direction. There's different types of dirt. A lot of times you'll have a fine particulate soiling that could be like dirt off the road, sand. But there are things you can dislodge fairly easily. Another type of soiling would be fibrous dust that falls onto things on open display. That's something that's pretty easy to dislodge. It's the usual dust that we find on our textiles and garments that are on open display are fine fibers from clothing, a lot of blue and white cotton fibers from blue jeans, sometimes vibrant Angora fibers from people's sweaters, also skin particles, and sometimes construction dust. So when we have new construction, that can fall out and settle on your textiles and garments that are on display. There's also more ingrained soiling with something that's been worn, where the soil is kind of ground into the fibers. That's a little bit more difficult to remove. And sometimes we have things that are called accretions. And actually, there's an example in this fur. There's some kind of, I don't know, something that's been a little damp or wet that's into the fibers of the fur. So you can find that on your textile surfaces too. Another thing that you'll commonly find on textiles and garments and fur and hide, but especially fur, and especially wool textiles, are insect debris. And actually, this is a wool. This is a knit structure. It's not a woven structure, but you can see there is a lot of loss here. That's all from insect damage, and often you'll find little bits of the insects, and it's always the larvae that are doing the damage. It's not your moths or your adult beetles, it's the larvae that are doing the eating. So when you're cleaning, and we'll address this a little later, when you're cleaning, you're going to be looking for little parts, evidence of the infestation, frass, which is the insect excrement and debris as they're eating, and sometimes you find the little casings that they've been pupating in, so kind of nasty, and sometimes dead adults and sometimes the dead larvae, especially if you really want to freeze your infested objects before you start cleaning. If you go to museumpest.net, that's a wonderful website with a lot of great information for identifying your pests and for how to freeze or kill the insects, and then for cleaning up afterwards. The other thing I wanted to talk about was condition of the textiles. So sometimes, like this piece is in fairly good condition, it's robust, it maybe has some insect damage on the surface, but structurally it's really pretty good. The same thing with this one. It's wrinkled, it has ingrained soiling, but structurally that's in good condition. This one is not. It's got the seams that are falling apart. It has also insect damage to the surface. So I'm not going to talk about handling here, but there are other presentations that talk about handling. But you really, if you're cleaning, you need to be aware of the condition of the textile. We talked about the condition of this. This has a lot of loss and things falling off of it. This is silk, and it's just kind of tattered. A lot of times silk gets very, very weak, and it's very light and diaphanous, so it's very easy to damage when you're cleaning. And in my experience, most of the damage that we see within the museum context is from handling. So that's a really important component, and assessing how strong your textiles are. The other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is pigmented surfaces, which in this case, this yellow pigment that's been rubbed on the surface probably doesn't have a binder, so it's fairly loosely bound. So that's something you want to be careful of not removing when you're cleaning. And there is one other aspect of cleaning besides the type of assessing the type of soil, the type of surface you're cleaning, and the condition of the textile. We always try to consult with the tribal community to see if they're under any gender handling restrictions, and to find out if there's type of soiling maybe we shouldn't remove. Because when you clean a textile and you're removing the soil on the surface, it's not a reversible process. You can't put it back into the position where it was. And sometimes that soil contains really valuable information, maybe pollen or evidence of use, or evidence of being used in ceremonial context. So you want to be really careful and know as much as you can about what you're removing and if you should be removing it. So I want to thank you for listening to this first part on textile types of soiling, and factors to consider when cleaning textiles and garments.